Hey class. So in this video, I'm going to go over the basic editing tools and interface for Audacity. So in this video, you're going to want to follow along so you can just go through each step and pause and try it on your own and then keep going if you want to do that. So you are going to need Audacity. There's a link right here on the class page to download Audacity. It's free. You should just be able to download it on your computer. You don't have to register or do anything else. And I'll put a link to that in the video description as well. Once you have it open or downloaded, you're going to want to put it in your applications folder, and then you can open it. If you need help, that might be different. Obviously, if you're on Windows, if you want help with that installation process, let me know. We can go over it. But let's go over to the program. This is the little podcast intro that I recorded in the previous video. So I'm just going to use this to go over a couple examples. And so I'm just going to go through the basics of the interface, a few editing tools, just some of the basics here, and to get us started with some editing. So let's switch over to here. And so when you open Audacity, you're not going to see an audio track like this. You can either import a track or record a track. And I'll cover that a little bit more in the next video. But you can, if you have a computer, if you have a microphone on your computer, you can just hit the little record button here. So I have a mic on my computer. I'm gonna mute this for a second. So if you don't have anything here, you might need to make sure that you have the microphone selected. So you would look in this audio setup section. This is also useful if for some reason you can't hear. You want to look at the playback device. You can see I have a bunch of different devices here, and I have it set to my external speakers or external headphones. I also have a recording device, and so I have this set to my USB microphone. So you can see there's different options there. And then if you don't see something that you just plugged in, click on this rescan audio devices and it'll show up. If you open Audacity and then plug in a microphone or something like that afterwards, it's not going to know that it's there. So just click on that rescan audio devices. So I'm going to choose my USB microphone. And then if I click on this red record button, it's going to start recording. And you can see it's actually recording on this track that I already have. That's not what I meant to do. If you don't have a track here at all, actually, let's just go ahead and re-record this. So let's get rid of this. If you don't have a track here at all and you hit record here, it's going to create a track for you, but you can also go to tracks and add new, and then you can do mono or stereo track there. For recording your voice, your microphone probably only has one input, so mono is going to be fine. So let's go ahead and record my podcast intro again. So I'm going to click the record button. And you usually want to give it just like a second. You don't want to, record right in the middle of talking. Sometimes you'll get like a clipping or something like that. So let's go ahead and record. Welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. Today, we are looking at editing audio with Audacity. Okay, that's my little goofy podcast intro. So now that we have some audio on our screen, let's go over some of the editing tools. So you can see these big buttons up here are obviously the playback buttons. If I want to rewind or fast forward, I can do that. If I want to play, welcome to the, I hit play. One thing to note that can be confusing at first is if you're playing the audio, you can't make edits. So that is kind of confusing sometimes. Like if I'm playing the audio or if I've just paused, I can't actually move stuff around. So for example, with my track, I can move this back and forth, but if I'm playing it, let's mute this for a second so I can keep talking. So if I'm playing it, I can't move the track. And if I pause, I still can't move the track. So if I want to do edits or changes, I have to hit stop completely. Now I can move the track. And then when I'm ready, I'll hit play again. So those are the playback buttons. There's also a loop button where you can loop a certain section of audio. I actually don't use that a ton, but that could be useful. Those are our main playback buttons. Then we have our main tool buttons here. We really are probably only going to use a couple of these. This first tool that kind of looks like an eye is the selection tool. And so this is just to set your playback cursor. So if I set it here and hit play, we're going to hear this part of the audio. Welcome to the, and if I set it over here, We're gonna hear that part. Editing audio. So that is kind of our selection tool. We can also select areas of audio, and that will just make that selection for us. So it'll only play what's inside of that selection. Welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. And so as long as I have that selection here, it'll make changes there. I can also do other editing within that selection, but let's come back to that in just a minute. Then there's the automation tool. I'm not going to go over this today, or in this video. I'll go over it in another video. But we can change the volume of the track there. This is for editing the samples. We're not going to do that. And then this is the Omni tool, which kind of chooses different tools based on where you are. I don't really use that a lot either. So these magnifying glasses are all really useful. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. This is going to zoom to a selection. I didn't have a selection, which is why I got that error. So if I make a selection and then do that, it's going to zoom the selection into view. I can make this larger, but just by dragging down on here. And then this button will zoom all of the audio into view. So that's really useful. I use those tools quite a lot. We also have this audio setup. We have already covered this, but this is where you can select your playback and listening devices. There's a share audio. I actually really don't use this very much. So, and then we've got our monitoring, recording and playback levels. So if we do some playback, we're going to see the levels there. Welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. And basically when you're looking at that, let's see if I can turn this on. Yeah, so you can see this is actually monitoring my voice right now. And basically, without going into like all the details about how we measure loudness in audio, you can see these are like negative numbers, which may be kind of confusing. But 0 is basically like as loud as we can get when it comes to this monitoring. It's a little bit different than what we're looking at with our amplitude on the waveform. Anyway, if this is green, you're fine. If there's a little bit of yellow, that's fine. When you see red, that means it's getting too loud. So if I get really close to my microphone and talk really loudly, you can see I get a little bit of red there. And you really want to avoid that because what that means is it's going to distort the signal. So that makes it harder to make your audio louder or quieter or like mix it with other things because you have this clipped audio that's recorded too loud. So you want to avoid that if possible. If you get a little bit of it, it's okay, but you want to try to stick in that green area if you can. And you can actually set the recording volume. So if I turn this knob, turn it back up, I think that actually will be in the recording too. So, this controls the level of my microphone, which is being used by both OBS and Audacity right now. So you might hear that in the recording. Okay, so those are some of our basic tools up there. Let's look at our track down here for a second. So right now we only have one track. We'll have multiple tracks in later videos. I can obviously change the size of the track as we already have looked at. Here, I can change the name of the track, so I could set this to like my vocal or voice track if I want to remember which track is which. I can mute the audio, which just mutes it, but it leaves it here to edit. I can solo, which means it plays only this audio. I can add effects here by clicking on this effects area. We'll go over that in a later video. And then here I have a couple controls. I can change the pan to left, or I can change the overall loudness with using the gain. So if I put this all the way down, it's going to be very quiet, very loud. I probably don't use this too often. Then this left and right is panning. So if I pan all the way to the left and we play back, we'll only hear it in the left ear. Welcome to the O. And then same thing with the right. Welcome to the O. So, we have two ears, so we can change between the two ears, and you could, move stuff a little bit to the left or right. Probably won't use this a ton either, but it can be useful there. In this drop down, we can also change the view. So if we want to see the spectrogram, we can do that. I usually just leave it on waveform though. You can change the format and the rate. We don't really need to do that, so I don't need to do anything there. Down here, we can just make it smaller, or we can select the whole thing. So within the audio, we usually just edit by making selections and then making edits. So let's say I want to cut out this beginning section of my audio. I can just select this bit. And then if I go to edit, you're going to see some different options. So I can say cut, which is just Command X. So I can also do that on my keyboard, Command X. That just cuts out the audio. And so it moves everything over. I can also go to remove special. So if I do silence audio, that's not going to take everything, or it's not going to move everything over. It's just going to silence this section, so it's not there anymore. So that might be useful if you want to keep this gap, but get rid of the audio there. So that's another option. What else can we do? We can split cut. So that's going to leave this audio here, but just get rid of this section entirely. So it's kind of similar, but we don't generate that silence. And then we can also do, let's see, split delete. Okay, so we just move that over here. So usually I just kind of select this section. I just hit backspace or delete on the keyboard, get rid of that. And so now we just start at the beginning. Welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. Today, so let's say I want to keep both of these sections, but I want to move one of them over a little bit. What I can do is go to edit, and I'm going to use split here. So I'll just go to audio clips split. You can also just do Command I. So if I hit Command I on the keyboard, now we have two clips, and when I hover my hand over up here, I can move them around. So I can change the timing of these. So let's listen to that again. Welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. Today, we are looking at editing audio. So here I have kind of an awkwardly long pause. So if I want to get rid of that, I just select that section, hit backspace, and then I can listen. Today, we are looking at editing audio and then I can kind of play around. If I want to kind of get a better transition right here, I can zoom into this section and listen to it back just by itself. So I'll select that area, looking at editing. So let's get the whole first word. We are looking at editing. So part of this is my performance, but I could get rid of a little bit more here and hopefully it'll sound better. We are looking at editing. So that sounds kind of worse and less natural. Anyway, I would probably re-record that if I was doing this for real, but just as an example for editing. Let's see, what other types of edits can we do? That's pretty much everything that we'll probably need to do in this section. We can, move things around, cut and paste and do different things. If you want to have, one panned one way and one panned the other way, then you need some new tracks. So you would go to tracks, go to add a new track, and then I can just grab this and pull it down here. And so now if I want to pan this one to the left and pan this one to the right, welcome to the Owen Roberts podcast. Today, we are looking. So I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but the kind of thing that you can do, if you wanted to, you would need a new track, or if you wanted to have one slightly louder or quieter than the other. But yeah, I think those are kind of our basic tools. There's some stuff down here that we probably don't really need to worry about. Once you have kind of edited everything and you're happy with what you want to do, you're obviously going to want to be able to export. So let's go over that process real quick, but we'll probably go over posting your weekly blog in the last video for this week. So to export, I just go to File and go to Export Audio. And there's some different formats, so let's take a look at those formats. So I'm going to click Browse here and create a new project. So actually, I'm going to need a whole new project folder. So let's make a new folder. Let's call this Audio Portraits of a Place. And so you can see there's a bunch of different formats in here. I'm not going to go over all of them, but let's look at a couple. So I'm going to start with Wave. This is a very often used format. So I'm going to click Save here, and I'm going to leave all these defaults and just click Export. And let's go export another. So this time, I'm going to, I didn't name it. I should have named it, but let's call this Audio edit one. So for this one, I'm going to do an MP3. You've probably heard of MP3 because most music files are MP3 files. And so we'll talk about that in just a second. So I'm going to save that and export. And see if there's any others that we want to do. Let's browse. Let's see. OGG is sort of a newer web format. AC3. I don't think we really need to cover any of these others. I think WAV and MP3 are the ones that we're going to use the most. AIF is like the Apple format. It's kind of similar to WAV, but I think we'll get most of what we need to understand between WAV and MP3. So I'm going to cancel this. And then of course we also need to actually save this project, which I haven't done yet. I should have done that a long time ago. So let's save our project, and I'm going to save project as, and I'm going to go to this project that I just created, and I'm going to call this edit one and save. Okay, so let's go over to our Finder, and I'm going to make a new window here and take a look at these files for a second. So in MMP 100, in my audio portrait, so you can see I've got a few files. So this AUP3 file, that's the Audacity project file. This is sort of like our Photoshop or our Illustrator file. This has all the edits in it. So if we want to come back and make edits later, we'll be able to do that. But of course we can't post an AUP3 file on a blog or send it to people. So this is very similar to the way we have our files set up for digital imaging. This MP3 you're going to see is very small. It's 129 kilobytes. So it's a very small file. It's a format that's used for music a lot, to share music online. And it became very, very popular in the 90s and early 2000s. And it's still sort of the standard. There are newer, better formats out there, but MP3 is still sort of the standard that we use for a lot of stuff. And it's, it sounds pretty good. They're able to make the files smaller by kind of taking out a lot of the frequency range of the recording. And they kind of take out frequencies that we can't hear that well or may not be that important. So they have an algorithm that sort of decides that. Let's rename this file audio edit one. Notice our WAV file is 800 kilobytes. So WAV file is what's called a lossless file. Let me write that down. Lossless. So you'll hear this with all different types of digital images, lossless versus lossy. Lossless means that all of the data that is recorded is still part of the file. So the full range of frequencies, the full, all of the samples, everything is still part of the file. It may do some things to try to compress those to make them smaller using math, but it's not getting rid of any of the data. Lossy will get rid of data. We lose some of the data, and it tries to choose which data is least important that we can still kind of hear the audio the way it's meant to be heard. So depending on what type of thing you're making, so if you're making a song, your MP3 file is actually going to be a lot larger. You can see this is only 9 seconds long, whereas most songs are like 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes long. And so it's going to be much, much larger. It'll probably be a few megabytes. Your WAV file, same thing, is going to be much, much bigger. So it's going to be like 100 megabytes maybe, or maybe 50. And so you don't really want to use WAV files for long, for music or things like that, but you might use WAV files for shorter things like sound effects or stuff like that, or for like archival purposes. So if you have a piece of audio that you really want to save like the highest quality version of that, or you're gonna put it on a CD or a record or something like that, then you want to have the best quality audio, which is going to be your WAV or your lossless formats. Okay, so that is it for this video. I'm going to do another video where I'm going to show you how to layer in some more audio over this. And then our last video, we'll just talk about some basic techniques for editing those layers together.